right, great. So I guess I just want to welcome everybody to our budget workshop. I'm going to share my screen. I think we're all in attendance. Yes, all board members are here. Noreen, I see you're joining us as well, which is great. Bruce is here. So let me start with what I'd like to suggest is we'd start with a discussion of the police department, because I know Ed Dowling is traveling, and so it makes it much easier for himself to join now, if possible. So, Lauren, do you see Ed and Chief Drum trying to log on, or?
Yeah, they just have to accept the promotion. I've promoted them all.
Okay, great. All right, so if you guys are on, just accept the promotion, and then I thought we could start off with a discussion of the additional budget requests. Where do I look? I've got two screens going, so I can't follow this. Okay, and I think we're waiting for Ed Dowling.
No, he's on. We're good. Let's roll.
Okay. All right, great. So I know that some board members wanted to just talk through a little bit more the officers, and you know, I guess the intention of hiring, I think the request was for 3, you know, and how this would impact their overall budget. Would this result in any kind of savings on the overtime, or is this supplemental to how you run your staffing for different shifts? So those were some of the conversation topics that were had before. So I thought if we could talk about the officers, and then we could talk about some of the other items as well. So did any board members have specific questions? I just remember those was kind of some topics raised in our last workshop. Or any specific questions for Jack or Ed?
Peggy, Norman, sorry. Can I just ask, I should know this, I apologize for not knowing it. How many officers are we at right now? Has there been an increase in the last couple of years? And what is the request for an additional budget? Can you hear that, Jack?
Yeah. Chief, do you want to answer that?
Somebody repeat the question, because Noreen was
I'm
broken
sorry,
up.
I'm phasing it out. How many officers what's your number right now with officers? Have you increased your officer count in the last 2 years? And what is your request for manpower and your additional ask?
We have 29. We originally had 30. Joe Race took an early retire. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So Joe Race took an early retirement. We right-sized his position within the agency, so that put us back down to 29. We had the opportunity to put 1 officer in the academy and advance it. I would use the term I was suspect. We're going to lose another officer shortly. He delivered that to me this morning. He's leaving. So we're at 29 officers. We're asking for 3 more positions.
Two July 1st, 2022, and 1 January 1st, 2023. So at the end of the 23 fiscal year, we would have 3 additional officers.
So I want to make sure I'm clear. So we're saying 2 in this fiscal year budget?
No, 2 July 1st, 2022.
And then 6 months later?
And then 6 months later, you get the 3rd.
So I'm going to let Kristen share her screen, because I know that they had put together kind of a history of the staffing profile for the police department. This might be just helpful so people understand. You got that? Or?
I don't see Kristen as a member, Peggy.
Yeah, I'm not. Oh, you're not a member.
What do you want to share, the staffing profile?
Yeah. Yes, Stacy. Yeah. Okay. That's right. Kristen's in the room. She's actually here live. The only person that's with me. So.
Does this help?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, Stacy.
But wasn't there? Didn't you have like a history over the last 10 years of the number of?
Yeah, I don't have that available. I didn't know we were going to share this. This is on the left side of the screen is how we budgeted for this current fiscal year. And then we had some movement through some promotions and change in rankings. And then on the right side is where we are right now without the additional officers.
I can speak to the analysis of the last 10 years if you'd like.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so when we first arrived here, we did a complete analysis of a needs assessment of the police department in the town and what the town was looking for. A lot of that came out of when the transition, the repair of the Madison Police Department as to what people, the citizens would like to see. Some of you then were sitting on various boards, some of you on Board of Selectmen at the time, some of you on the Board of Finance at the time. But we came up with a number that would be adequate to support the police department and their functions and their service to the town at 32. This went from to the next year, budget year 2011-12. I asked for those positions. They agreed after a presentation by both the Board of Police Commissioner and myself that they would add an additional 2 officers. They added 1. As we moved to the next 2 years, I asked again to get to that number of 32. I was asked if I would be able to allow maybe 1 a year over a 5-year period. I agreed, no problem, I'll do that. Well, here we are, 2010 to 2022. I'm still asking for those 32 officers so that it basic functions back to the town.
Jack, I know we sort of covered this last time, but I guess I'd be interested just to hear it again because I think it's a useful conversation. But I guess if I'm thinking of sort of generic workforce planning, I do a little bit of this at work, so I'm not too far away from it. But generic workforce planning, the add head count, my expectation would be that overtime likely would go down relative to the other staff. But I got the sense in the conversation the last time that that wasn't necessarily the case. Could you just maybe elaborate on that point a little bit for us, just to understand how that works? And maybe there's nuances that we frankly don't understand.
Well, I think somebody who has served in various boards asked the question. A good question is, Jack, will this reduce overtime? I guess that question would be answered over a period of time, meaning that if I were to have the 3 additional officers, I now have whatever their contractual days leaves that they're entitled to through that year, times 3. I would then have to figure what would it cost to backfill them at time and a half while they're on vacation or on a sick day or on a training day. So I couldn't give you an accurate figure until this moves down the road. I can only speak to past, what we've had past practice. Most of the folks that we have in the department cherish time off or time, building up time for future vacations, things to that extent. So we still have that overtime we're going to pay. Now, is it going to reduce me ordering people in at time and a half? Probably. Can I give you an exact number on that? No, I can't. And I think an analysis would be difficult because we've always gone with less to do more. And what has been somewhat pretty much the same wage is the overtime in COVID made it worse. Let's face it, because I had at one time 9 officers out. So we're paying them while they're home. We're paying officers to backfill their time. So that was a major piece of the increase, particularly in this year and last year. So as I said, I would have to look at this maybe 6 months out to give somewhat of analysis. We know our busier time is during the summer months. So I know that's probably not the exact answer you want to hear, but that's a fair answer.
Scott, can I just say something?
Yeah, of course, please.
You know, just given my experience both in labor and healthcare regarding this issue of overtime versus regular time, from an employer point of view, overtime is a penalty. You're paying time and a half for the same work that you would normally pay straight time for.
Totally.
So as a representative of the employer, you know, in the budget discussions, the commission is very alert to the question of overtime and the effort to reduce overtime to as reasonable and as low a level as possible. It is an area where, as the chief mentioned earlier meetings, you're never going to eliminate. On a particular day, if you had 6 officers on a shift, it would not be enough because you had the 2 car crashes, the home burglary, the domestic dispute, all in the 4-hour period. So, you know, you're never going to eliminate it, but obviously adding these resources, we think as a commission, and we talked about this with the chief, we think we would be able to see a reduction in overtime. Right now, it is, because it is so tight, any little spike, you know, that is often the first stop you have to make to get the adequate coverage. And that is not, you know, from, again, an oversight and a management is where we think we should end up. So,
Yeah, makes
you know,
sense.
as the chief said, that overtime with these additional officers would have a big target on its back from a reduction point of view.
Well, and I would think from an employee engagement standpoint,
Right.
a motivational standpoint, from a lifestyle and health standpoint, you know, reducing overtime is always a good thing, right? Because
Yeah.
your employees are happier. So
Yeah.
unless they just love the paycheck, I mean, that could be,
Yeah.
that's a separate conversation.
But,
Well,
so a question I have though, because this kind of helps refresh me a little bit. So we have, because we've had some promotions, right? You've done this reorganization. So you've taken people off patrol and put them up and promoted them, you know, for career development. So if you were to look at the number of patrol officers, you know, 2 years ago, would that number 18 have been the same or would it have been higher? Just patrol officers.
well, I'll let the chief answer, but basically, the chief has developed, everyone in the department is a player coach. So the fact that you've got a rank of lieutenant or even captain and chief, but you've got lieutenants and sergeants, they are all, as I understand it, incorporated into patrol schedules or coverage schedules. Now, you know, they're not into some of a regular patrol schedule if you're a detective or doing some other things as a lieutenant, but you know, we have an awful lot of those rank officers who are in cars, you know, providing that level of service. So from an overtime, they do participate because they are involved in some of those coverage levels.
Peggy, what are you breaking the number down from, the 29 officers? Are you breaking?
No, I'm just looking at, you know, because I know that there was some promotions made, so we have more senior staff, so to speak, right, in the police department now. So right now, if you look at the table that Stacy's compiled, we have 18 patrol officers, 6 sergeants, 3 lieutenants, and 1 captain, right? If you were to look at the same chart 2 or 3 years ago, it had been a different mix, right? Would you have had more patrol officers and fewer sergeants and you didn't have 3 lieutenants 3 years ago, right?
No, the numbers always hovered between 16 and 18. You also have 2 SROs. You have 3 detectives that are 3 officers that are assigned with the Detective Bureau, which had an incredible solve rate. Thank goodness for them. We also have we'll call it the corps managers above the rank of lieutenant. And by the way, I mean, I worked New Year's Eve to stop it and
I
report it in.
understand. I'm just trying to explain though that the patrol officer base hasn't changed, it changed a lot, right? Even though you had these promotions. So now you're adding additional 2 to 3 more officers to that 18 number, right? So you're
Right, we're
getting
here.
more boots on the ground, is what I'm saying. And you're gonna take the burden off of some of the people you promoted.
Well, let's go to comparative analysis. And the FBI says you should have X amount of officers, essentially 2.4, 2.7 per 1,000 people. Based on that formula, we should have 36. I don't want 36. I could probably do a great core function with 32. But I know the town of Guilford, which has roughly how many more square miles, maybe 2,000 more people, they have 38. I know the town of Clinton, which is 13,000 people and a third, less than half the size of the town of Madison, has almost the same number of officers that we do. I'm trying to be able to service the schools. I'm trying to be able to have those radar enforcement special teams so they're able to address speeding on all these roads that we get the calls on. Many of you on this call have called me for that. Hey, can we get somebody here? We get somebody there. Hey, can we have somebody just stand by because there might have been a threat? I don't have that personnel right now. I'll use yesterday during the day. Myself and another officer left the building to go answer a call because our officers were tied up on calls. We're running anywhere from 3-4 officers on a shift. That's dangerous. And as I explained the last time we presented the budget, a domestic takes 2 officers. Involuntary committal takes 2 officers. Medical call takes 1 officer assisting. People that walk in the door with their complaint don't want to see an officer. I want to see a cop. I want to talk to him right now. That's what we get at the front door. That's our world. So it makes it very difficult for me when we are constantly running at a minimum. People need to want to take their vacations. People want to take their time off. They're being ordered in like there's no tomorrow. I'm sympathetic to that, and that's why I and my other command staff, we jump in and we do our fair share to help them, but it's not right. I've been asking for this over a period of time now. It's beyond 10 years. I've done everything I can to be as transparent as possible. I've also done everything innovative that I can think of. If somebody has something else, please suggest it, to keep the cost down and prolong the life of the equipment. We've done all of that. So I'm at this point now where I'm saying, hey, I have more than 20, 30 people showing up some meetings demanding that we do certain services for them. A good example is the car thefts and the article that we just read in the source. It takes people, it takes teamwork, it takes officers to do the patrolling every day. Someone says, can we run radar? Well, I explained that last time. Put a car in park, we put out the radar, and next thing I'm going to call for service. Put it back and drive, and off we go. Listen, I don't want to beat this to death, but we've been asking for this for a period of time. And we've been great partners with all the boards where we've done the best we can to save the town money. We've done a very innovative way of saving money through HR. I think the time has come now, and maybe we're the victims of our successes. I think the time now is that we have to make a decision, yes or no. We're going to give the police department the tools they need to do the job that the citizens of the town of Madison expect and they're paying taxes for. Plain and simple.
Jack, may I ask a question? This is Noreen. Thank you for that. And I know you've been asking. I think when I left on the board last time, you were maybe at 26 or 27, as I recall. And I know Guilford is up there but they have, more, they're a bigger town and they have 4,000 more residents. But let me ask you this, with all the talk about, you mentioned car thefts, but crime in general, we're hearing statewide all about this crime. Is that a factor in Madison that we're actually not being able to keep our people safe? Should we be concerned about that with their, I know you've been asking for these 3 people for years, but is something changed this year that makes it different?
I'm not quite understanding Noreen, and I apologize. Maybe it's a connection I have with you here. It's a hard time. I have a hard time hearing you, and I apologize.
Can you hear me now?
No, it's muffled. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Noreen, I can hear. Let me try to answer it. I certainly can't do it as well as the chief. But Noreen, there is certainly we had a spike in the car thefts that occurred over the last year and a half, particularly along some areas adjacent to the shoreline where there was a certain population density and driveways are close together, and there was also some habits of people
Not locking your car, yeah.
like it's there. So we did see a practical, an actual spike. The other thing, what we saw, what this request certainly has as its foundation is over the last year, particularly last summer, we had, when we were able to have the in-presence police commission meetings, we had a standing room only crowd. Literally a standing room only crowd at several meetings. We had 41 people at a Zoom meeting who were concerned, upset. Certainly they felt this was not like it was 15 years ago when we were able to leave our doors open, and now there was a sense of concern and fear. So that some of what developed this was trying to both meet Madison resident expectations, and also educate them in terms of the practicalities of you can't leave the keys in the visor in the car in the driveway, which unfortunately an awful lot of people are doing. But the bottom line is, it is not 1972. It is the society we're in, where some criminal elements are more organized. There's a sense that the penalties that they're going to face are not as severe. And so we're, as a society, dealing with some of that. And I think the chief and his departments did a terrific job with an outreach to neighborhoods, and people were engaged. But the point is to meet expectations in terms of dealing not with all criminal elements, but with speeders, with some of the domestic issues, with some of the training requirements. It is the world we're now living in 2022. And as the chief said, a little bit of our past success, I think there's a risk of that being diluted because we're not able to meet expectations. You do not want to catch up on public safety because, I'll stop because I don't want to take up people's time.
I guess I could add to that a little bit.
Yeah.
If you look at the statistics that we publish every quarter, which cover monthly, I mean, there is roughly essentially anywhere from 9 to 1,200 calls for service that we receive on a monthly basis. That's a contact with a police officer. And that could be out of that, maybe it involves a half a dozen to 2 dozen criminal arrests where somebody's taken into custody. Maybe it involves a domestic, which on average could be 10 a month. Maybe it involves involuntary committal. Let's face it, particularly during COVID, our involuntary committals are up beyond what I would ever thought they were. And I'd say the same thing. I believe the critical effect of COVID is more psychological than it has been viral, at least from the eyes of policing. We go to all the medical calls on average over 100. Besides the ambulance and the fire department, we're going also with the oxygen and defib, and generally we're there at the same time, but not first. We have other areas in town we cover, although we're not compensated for, that being the park, Interstate 95. We're not going to deny going on a 911 call. We probably on average 20 to 40 frauds against seniors in this town. I don't know why that continues. That's been going on for several years now as people became savvy to go on the internet. And let's face it, when that happens to them, first thing they got to do is call the police department, even involves the insurance company, have them come in and investigate it. So it's not just like, I love when I hear that, well, nothing really happens here. Oh, come on. People rely more on the police department than ever. They call us for, we're the catch-all. Psychological issue, call the police. Medical issue, call the police. Neighbor dispute, call the police. Something at school, call the police. Something happened in town campus, call the police. Something downtown, this is what we're dealing with. I wish I had more people to give people the service that they're expecting. But right now, and I'll use the phrase my commissioner does, we're wound as tight as a drum. That's how we do. We don't have the extra personnel to do it. So I'm asking you folks, beseeching, this is something that's going on for a period of time. And one of you said it last time, the last meeting, we're the victim of our own successes. We've been transparent. We've done more with less. We're just asking what we need. We're not asking for any more. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up Noreen's question. I thought it was a very good one. And I sat through the police commission hearings when the public has been quite vociferous. Ed, you and the chief have presented some very good arguments tonight, but I think what I would like to ask you to speak to right now is, what will the public see if we are able to grant these 2 positions? What will the public perceive? What will they see as being different?
You're me, Ed.
Chief, why don't you go? And I certainly have my opinion in terms of what they'll see.
Go ahead, sir.
I think the public will start to see more of a presence. And I want to be very candid with this. I don't think it's going to be dramatic. or, you know, somebody's gonna say, what's going on? Because police cars keep driving past our house. It is not. Just given the size of the town and some of the services, I think it's going to be more of a steady, continued sense. When you call the police, you get a timely response. There is someone who will follow up with you if an incident happens at your house. You get your questions answered in a reasonable time frame. It is not going to eliminate any, so there will be no car thefts. It is certainly not going to prevent, eliminate all break-ins. But you are going to, the public, I think, is going to see a presence that is on an ongoing basis. They certainly see the police in terms of events or major incidents, but it's those times in between, as the chief just mentioned, where they expect to interact with a police officer on a reasonable basis, as opposed to there's been a minor car crash and they're sitting there for an hour and 10 minutes because the two officers are involved in an incident in North Madison and no police officer has responded as yet. So I think there will be a subtle, but I think sustainable and result that the town residents will start to see and feel. They certainly will, it will give us the opportunity to have more proactive plans, whether it's involving certain neighborhoods, patrolling certain areas, following up with certain school events. It'll allow the department to be able to plan some events on a proactive way, rather than to say, we're simply in a reactive mode now, where we cannot really look at any sort of reserve, because there is no reserve unless we call somebody in. Okay.
Peggy, I'm not sure how you were hoping to move this forward as far as the board goes, but I'll be the first one out there. I'm prepared to support the request for the additional 3 officers. So I'll just get that portion of the conversation started if you'd like.
Well, I think there's a couple things, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the other requests, but if you want to focus on the officers, I think, look, the problem is that this would have been probably, preferable to have eased us into this, right? And so a question I have in terms of, because it is kind of a big staffing request in 1 year, I guess the question is, if we feel that our goal is to increase the number of patrol officers by an additional 3, and I know it takes a while to hire and train, recruit, train and hire, or whatever the order is there a way we can kind of ease this over a period of time? And so that it doesn't all kind of hit the budget this next year, because the reality is a lot of times I'm finding we budget for new positions and then we end up never hiring the people, or it takes, 18 months, 2 years to hire the people. Because so we always end up, over budgeting essentially for staff that we haven't been able to recruit yet. So one question is, is there, we can look at this as a goal, over a period of time, over the next 2 to 3 years, that we want to grow our, our staffing in the police department by 3 personnel. So my understanding is one of those, obviously, we're already kind of committed to, if I recall, for next year, right? Because you have somebody that you wanted to get into the academy prior to this new budget year, and so that this would be, that's basically taking up one of those commitments already, right? Or is that in addition to? Yeah.
That's irrelevant right now because we lost an officer today and we have 2 that said they may be retiring July 1st. So that puts us way behind April.
But from a budget point of view, you're correct, Peggy.
Yeah.
We have one officer who's in, when we made the count, we were looking at patrol officers, but we have one officer who is an officer, but he's really in an academy and has not yet graduated. So we with the current head count, we have one officer who is in training, who, if we position were to be approved July 1st, that officer, that trainee, when he completed his training, would go into that slot.
Okay, and I think that, like, you know, since I've been in this position, I've always said the minimum should be adding at least one more police officer. And I've always supported that when the chief felt it was the right time to do that. You know, so now we get to, do we add, you know, an additional 2 this year, or do we wait, or can we stage it through, you know, doing 1.5 for this budget cycle? So you'd have a mid fiscal year hire. So that would give us 2 for next year, basically. And then, you know, kind of a verbal commitment that we would want to continue forward with the 3rd officer in the next budget cycle.
May I just, go ahead, Ed, go.
I'll tell you, from the commission point of view, we thought and had a lengthy debate over how to phase this in. And our, because we're very alert to the budget implications of this. I mean, this was not a cavalier, this will keep them quiet kind of request. There was, you know, we had 2 full discussions at 2 separate meetings, and then a separate budget workshop. We believe, as a commission, that the way we structured it, with 2 effective July the 1st, and then picking up your consideration, deferring the 3rd one to January the 1st of 2023, was a reasonable approach given the current demand. So I understand certainly the advantages of deferring it, and won't make any reference to the fact that approach didn't seem to work in 2012, 2013. Forget about that. We're here now. This is your selectman decision, but we really believe it is a reasonable request based on the expectations that we feel and hear from the Madison residents, to go forward with the request as drafted and presented.
So, I mean, and the reason I raise this is let's reflect on that. We also, this reorganization all happened at once, right? That occurred earlier in this year. So where normally you should have a long-term staffing plan. And so there was kind of a, you know, reorganization that occurred. There were a number of promotions that happened, but there was not discussion of them backfilling, basically. Those people that were promoted, it's a pyramid structure. I get it. You promote people, you want to remove them from foot patrol, you want to add additional staff to support that. So, but that wasn't part of what we talked about last year. So now we're kind of expanding the pyramid, and I just looking at it as a, you know, more time to absorb this, that's all. Because like I said, we already did the reorganization in this budget year. So now we're taking the reorganization and we're adding on additional staff to it. So, so you feel strongly that you're recommending 2.5?
Yes.
Peggy, may I just speak for a minute? I think I'm not unmuted anymore. You know, I'm listening to all this, and I think, first of all, you know, it's going to be quite a message for us, for the taxpayers this year. You know, we just came off an incredible, successful referendum, but there's a lot of money, and, you know, a lot of people are concerned. So I think a message that we're phasing in police officers versus putting in three positions, even with the suggestion that Ed, and thank you for that, Ed, with the 2 for July 1st and defer 1 to the 23rd, which wouldn't show up in this budget, correct? That we're working on now.
Yeah, I think all 3 would show up in the current
All
model.
three would
All
show
3,
up?
yeah, it's in our additional budget
2
request.
July 1 and then 1 January. So it would be 2. I was suggesting
Oh,
1.5.
right. Before, that's right.
Would be 2.5.
Well, Peggy, one of the things you said is because it seems it takes a long time depending on where these police officers come from, what level of training they have when Jack finds them, to really be ready to do the job. But we're taxing the people from day one, from the dime we put them in the budget. The taxpayer has to pay for it. But I just think, I know they've been asking for a long time. I'm surprised. I am worried about what's going on with the crime rates. Might not be terrible in Madison now, but there was, someone shot at a house in Chester trying to steal a car. It's going to happen, and we've got to look proactive as a board. That we've heard this loud and clear, that we've got to just take a look at what's going on in society right now. I mean, Jack, you told me that you're arresting people with ankle bracelets on already. They've been arrested a few times already. This is our new reality. So anyway, I would support it. I would have liked the third person to be out even a little longer, to be quite honest with you. Only because, for two reasons. One is the message we're sending, but the other one is I don't think we could get people ready to go in that such a short time frame. I think it might happen, but it just seems like there's always somebody in training and not quite ready. That's kind of part of the way the organization works, I guess. But I would support it. I'm a little reticent for the third one right now. I like the idea of the half the year, but I wouldn't have a problem if we put that off by 1 year. But I would definitely support the two we talked about for July 1st.
I'd love to build on what Noreen just said, because I think I kind of like where you're going. I mean, again, coming off of the successful referendum, I think the taxpayers are going to be expecting us to consider the budgetary impact as well as the safety impact. Listen, I completely agree that safety is a concern. It's paramount. We should be consistently thinking about it. But at the end of the day, there are real budget implications to this of the tune of $271,000. So that is real. And that's something we have to consider that impacts, everybody's wallets. I'm going to put an idea out there, sort of building on what Noreen just said. I don't know if it's a good one or not, but I'm going to launch it and see where we go. But what if it's one officer this year and commit to a second officer the following year, but we're committing to two now?
Well, I'm going to stick by the 2.5 that's presented to us, the 2 July 1st, the 1 January 1st. For as long as I've been on this board, the police chief and the Board of Commissioners have come to us with a very consistent request, and very consistently we've deferred them. So from a phase-in perspective, I think the phase-in has been 10 years. And I very much view this as the decision point that we were at a few years ago with the Ambulance Association. We just had to come to terms with doing what needed to be done to get them back in a healthy place, and was not fun to do financially, but it was the right thing to do. I don't know how we, as a Board of Selectmen, can sit here and second guess a consistent message from the police commissioners and really multiple boards, because they've changed over time, but their message hasn't. And second guess the chief and say, this is not the right number. I think that, they've presented us a plan as far as onboarding them. There's never any guarantees, but I would be shocked if they've presented us with a plan that they didn't feel that they could execute on. So,
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but that's also sort of not really fair, because the reality is, over the last multiple 6 years since you and I have been on the Board of Selectmen, we have questioned the chief, and we have not put forward the workforce planning that he suggested. So that's our reality. That's our job. I mean, we're supposed to be, not only looking after public safety, but also being fiscally responsible as well. So it's a balancing act.
So just, can I clarify though, what's in the budget request number? Is that 3 officers for the full fiscal year, or 2 officers for the full fiscal year, 1 for half the year?
I think the initial was for,
we drafted the 2 officers for the full year and 1 officer for half a year.
So that's what that 271,000 represents?
I think it's for 3 full officers at that point when we did the budget book. Yeah.
Okay. So the number that actually is in here is for the 3 officers. So you're saying that you talked about in
What I have.
additional discussions, and you're suggesting now 2.5, basically. So 2 full, for the full budget year, and then 1 coming in January.
The original submission is for 3 officers. It was submitted also with the cost of all benefits. The benefits were backed out because that's going to be on the HR side, and that's that 271 number. That is for 3 officers.
Okay,
It
so,
was for 3 officers and we removed any of the benefits, like any other additional requests.
so that number would be reduced somewhat, a little bit, right? If we took the 3rd one and made it half-time for the year. But then we're committed next year, obviously, to all. Well, I think that, so it seems that, we're kind of in a situation where I think the board has to look at the context of all the other budget decisions. I think that you come back with a kind of compromise recommendation, which is 2.5, right, for this year's budget. Obviously, I don't think anybody questions, Jack, we want to support you. And we want to support the police department. You guys have done great work. So this is just more about trying to figure out how do we make this work now, and what's going to be best for the overall budget. It's going to work for the budget, getting you what you need. So, I think our board needs to deliberate, okay, is it going to be the 2.5? Is it going to be 1.5? I think that's a discussion we're going to have after we look at the whole big picture and see where we come out. I would like to talk briefly, though, about the other requests. I think the speed sign discussion, which is rolled into as a budget request. Those are the illuminated speed signs. And is this going to be like the 17,000? That's just the purchase, right? Those signs. So that's kind of an investment in the actual signage, correct?
It's the purchase of the signs and there's the installation.
Right. Okay. So that's something I think that the board can talk about funding. I think those signs are very well received by the public, and I know we've been talking about this. The police, when I was on the police commission, we talked about these signs. I think they do feel that they're very effective. So I think that's something that perhaps we might look at doing as a special appropriation rather than actually putting the acquisition of them in the budget. Yes.
I was instructed to put it into the budget, not to ask for special appropriation. So,
well, we're looking at. No, I understand. I'm just saying we're looking at how to handle this, the best way to finance that, and then the other piece is the traffic studies analysis installation. That's the installation. It's $12,000. Okay. The other one I think is where I don't feel the board has had a lot of discussion about, and that's the camera system. This is one that would be rolled out more in non-town. I'm sorry, I cannot talk today. So I came back from vacation, so I'm still not in the work mode here. The camera system, my understanding, this is non-town facilities, right? This is like downtown this is a very different proposal than just, adding an additional camera at the surf park because we've had vandalism, right? This is actually putting in a system at different locations throughout town that would be monitoring public spaces, correct?
maybe I misinterpreted, but I mean, this discussion has taken place in probably 20 some odd communities in the state of Connecticut. Well, certainly to the value of any of the critical infrastructure of the town, particularly anywhere that be susceptible to possible crime. We know that in town of Madison, that could be anywhere, although downtown probably be the first for me, first place that I have some sort of camera system to record data.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, that I think that that's where I think we just needed as a board to have an additional conversation about this outside of the budget process to make sure that is this the direction we want to go? I think there's going to be a lot of public concern and want to understand, where the cameras are located, what's done with the footage, the policies around it. And actually, I'm just looking at this. Is this a typo? This says in here 2,400, but that's per camera, right?
2,400 was the installation and maintenance, all in cost.
Right,
By the
okay,
company,
that's
and
the 10
that's the big,
Times 10, times 10.
Just- I'm a little
How,
slow.
how much of that, Jack, is annual? It will be coming back every year to us.
the camera cost is approximately 2,400 each camera. That's install, maintenance, that's the cloud. That's all the static IP, that's everything they put into that camera where it's installed. And that's the gathering of information and fed back to our dispatch center or to the vehicles.
Is
So
there
it's
recurring
ongoing-
cost then? Is there recurring cost?
Ongoing annual
Every year,
cost.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So basically, if we signed up for the 24, that would be 24 every year.
yes.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to double check, okay. All right, well, those are my questions, on police. I think the board just needs to have a conversation, about.
Jack
how-
got his hand up, Peggy.
Yep,
I just want to add in that before we end this conversation, police department, is that right now there are approximately 93 spots for training of police officers in the state of Connecticut that are projected for this year. The increase to requests for police officers is about 30, 40 beyond that. So any spot that comes along, they offer, it's a margin of opportunity for the community. So it's fair to say that I'm probably going to be looking for, after July, if whatever the number is for officers, probably laterals again, because we're not going to be able to put anybody in the academy. There isn't any slots for training. That's been greatly reduced by people leaving law enforcement, changes to candidates into the academy. Right now, there's a transition with the post council. They're making requirement of certification through the agencies. We're in a better place because obviously we're CLIA advanced, but it's a moving dynamic right now in training of police officers. I just want you to be aware of that. So it's like the margin of opportunity comes when I'm able to put somebody through the academy. So as far as the additional capital improvements, I leave that to you folks. I mean, what we do and put on there was from people that have asked us from various meetings, from emails, walking in the door or coming to the office saying, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? Are they force multipliers in some respects? Absolutely. Do we get a lot of our information? We've solved all our car thefts. We've arrested a total of 8 kids. I'm not sure where they're in the system. The point is, we've had burglaries that we've done through using of cameras in other locations, whether they be in businesses or the interstate or other agencies. But the point is, they have value. They work. And that solve rate wouldn't come easy unless we had that piece of information. That's the use of cameras. As far as the speed signs, we know their value. People, they like them. They work. But I can't be the public works department. I can't keep taking from my budget to make this work. And I can't keep telling people, no, I can't do that, because they don't want to hear the bureaucracy. When they come in the door or they come to a meeting, they want an answer. They want it brought to closure. So that's all we're trying to do, is give them the best we can. So that's why I asked for those items. If you don't want them, you want to vote them down, I understand.
Jack, may I ask you a question? The cameras downtown and other places, could that be possibly looked at as an economic development component? I would think it would help with businesses downtown. You mentioned that. Would that ever be anything we'd look under economic development as far as more protection downtown for the shops and the business?
Well, I've met with some of the bank's presidents because they have the 501c3 where they commit back to the communities. They all have some sort of community fund under different acronyms. I did speak with three of the bank presidents in Brian Duquesne's office when he was active with the downtown, and looking for them to contribute X amount of dollars into a camera project. They thought it was a great idea, but it never took flight.
Well, I'm wondering, as we look at the American recovery money going forward, economic development is a piece of it. It might be something, Al, we want to at least consider.
okay,
Just
All right,
can I ask one other question? Sorry, Peggy. Is that okay? I know you're trying to move on. I don't know if this is for Ed or for Jack, but in just thinking about the operating budget and how you guys plan each year for the operating budget, I know in years past, we've had to come back and vote for special appropriations for the overtime. Is the planning done, and maybe this is for Stacy, is that already incorporated now into the operating budget as a planned expense? I mean, I know you can't always predict.
I think the
I'm just trying to
number,
mitigate, the down the road expenses as well, as something that's planned.
Stacy will tell you that we've always somewhat, we've been very close over 10 years now as to closing out the budget as close to zero as possible by moving funds that may be available between the labor lines. We've been able to save some money. As far as that lump sum 60 to 80,000 annual town meeting, that's the highway construction money. It comes out of a budget that's set at 35. It brings in over 100 on average. You have to add the additional because that's bookkeeping for the town of Madison. We've had this discussion numerous times. I don't know why they do it that way, but that's the way they do it pre-audit. Maybe Stacy could add more to it. That's the number you're talking about.
Stacy,
No,
is there anything better we can do
No,
from
but
the
there's,
budget?
yeah, but Jack, every year we have to do line item transfers in the police department to cover overtime issues. I mean, that's been done consistently for the last 5 or 6 years. So because you have fewer people, so you've had to call in your troops at times, and we've had to make it whole at the end of the year.
My only point is, can we get it into the budget? That's all, just so that it's a real number.
The line item transfers between labor lines are helped us mitigate it, and so we don't have to ask for a special appropriation. I mean, we have to still budget example for holiday time, vacation time. If the officer chooses to put it on the books and not take the dollar value, that money's back down and put to labor to offset saying, hey, we had overtime. I can't plan 9 people being out for COVID. I can't plan people being sick and staying home. I can only go by what the numbers they have tangibly on the books, black and white, and put a dollar amount at time and a half and regular pay for that person home. That's how it's based zero budgeting. As far as the highway construction, we charge over $100 an hour, car, workers' comp, labor a time and a half. We invest 35, we get over 100 back on average. So all they're doing is moving the 35 to whatever the actual numbers are paying a cop on the job and bringing it back to zero. That's not asking for additional monies. The money's already gone back in the general fund. Meaning is we've charged the contractor, AT&T, they write a check to the town of Madison. The money to pay the cop came out of the police budget. The money for using the cop goes back to the town into the general budget.
Okay, well, I think with that, let's say thank you very much, Ed and Jack, for joining our budget workshop. I think we've got a lot of information and have a really good understanding of requests. And so I think that our board just has to start reviewing the different requests and make some decisions.
And, well, but just put a pin on that point, just maybe Stacy can sort of help us just understand, maybe it's the last 5 years, and just look at the history and just make sure that we're capturing all of this from an accurate budget standpoint as best we can. I mean, I recognize, I do budgets every day. So I get the fact you can't get it 100%, but it'd be great to just understand the facts so that we're going in with something that's hitting the North Star here.
I agree.
Yes, I can get you the history. I think Jack's talking about the special duty overtime. And that, yeah, he's absolutely correct that we get revenue too, which is over and above what we spend in that line. But the replacement overtime, I can get you the history on that one.
That's just regular overtime. That's for regular officers.
For replacement for officers who are out. But again, to Jack's point, there's always something going on. There's people out for workers' comp, but I can certainly just, give you the data on that.
Thank you.
Hopefully, maybe wouldn't be needed if we have adequate staffing, right? That's why we're looking at his officers. So we wouldn't have to do those adjustments.
It's hard to hear you, Peggy. Somehow you've gotten quiet.
No, I'm just saying that hopefully by adding some additional officers, we might not have to make those transfers at the end of the year because we'll have more flexibility in staffing.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, 6:29. So thank you so much for your time, Ed. I know you're out of,
Good.
yeah, you're on the other coast, right? So
Yes, thank you very much.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So I think this, what I'd like to do is just go back, because we had this kind of general conversation last time about kind of the big picture before we get into the details for each request. And we talked a lot about the different requests, but let's step back and do a big picture look real quick. So I kind of put together with Kristen and Stacy, just to refresh everybody, because we were kind of like, what did we have last year? And are we trying to be in line with last year? Are we trying to do better than last year? Or are there things in there that just we can never get to the same that we were last year? So this will just give you an idea. If we took everything that was requested, this is not what I'm recommending, it's just saying if we did. So it gives you kind of a zone of discussion, right? Or potentially, not, but the town operating budget, which does not include CIP or debt service, last year, the one that was approved, the final one that went to the voters, was grew at 4%, 4.16%. And as we've talked about, a lot of that growth is almost 70% of the costs are based on salary and fixed costs. But so that was kind of the overall growth of the operating budget. If you took all the budget requests this year and we approved them all, we would be 4.6%. Okay, so then you layer in capital, and what happened is there was an increase that we had recommended the Board of Finance for an increase in CIP. The Board of Finance at that point was just really looking to keep things in check, and so rather than building it into the budget, they did the special appropriation into CIP. So the actual CIP capital line did not go up last year, so there was no increase in that, and instead they took the amount and put it in as an infusion into the CIP fund. So there was no change in what we put into CIP last year. Whereas this year, the committee recommended $275,000 roughly. So knowing that that number was flat for the last 2 years, now we're going up by almost 8%. And then the debt service will continue to grow. We're incurring the library debt now, so this is just a town-related debt, correct? Or is that's not including the, oh, it's all the debt, right? So we have
Oh,
some.
no, this is just town.
No, this is
Yeah,
just
it's
town
town.
debt.
Part in
That's what I thought. So this is the library, so that is.
The library, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's going up by another $108,000. So overall, the town budget that was approved last year grew at 3.7%, and this, if we included everything, it would be over 5%. And then it just shows with the education budget as recommended, what the total budget increase would be. So then I just wanted to show you a little bit from the mill rate standpoint, because this is obviously more Board of Finance territory, but we need to look at the big picture here as we make our decisions on spending. Last year, the mill rate grew 1.76%, and the Board of Finance did use about $750,000 out of the undesignated fund balance for mill rate reductions. But the grand list only grew 0.7%. We're seeing a huge growth in the grand lists. And this is not final, right, Stacy, this 2.2% number?
It's not final. No, we have to wait for the BAA to do its job.
Right.
Meaning what, it could go up?
Well,
It could be.
yeah, it could, but this is kind of the estimated grand list growth right now. So if you factor that into the mill rate calculation, it's huge, right? Now, most of this is related, though, not most of it, but a large chunk of it is
Majority,
because of the autos. The autos have, because of the crazy market that we're in right now, the value that the assessors are giving on automobiles has gone up quite substantially. So some of this growth is driven by that. So, so this just gives you perspective. If we did the same thing again and we used the 750 and we approved everybody's budget request, that it would be with the mill rate. It would result in a mill rate growth. This is estimated. So it's very rough, but it gives you an idea of where we are. Because of the grand list growth, we have a little buffer, okay? So I'm not recommending that we approve all the requests, but it gives you an idea. So now I did this really quickly because I thought, okay, are we targeting, because I said, well, what are we trying to get to? Are we trying to get to a mill rate growth, a budget growth rate? So I looked at the budget. I said, if you just focus on the operating budget, forget capital and debt. And you said, okay, right now we're at 4.64, which is the number that you can see over here under town operating percent change, 4.64. What if we just tried to get to what we had last year? So that would mean that we could approve $435,000 of additional budget requests. So we couldn't approve all of them. We'd have to cut roughly $120,000 off the additional budget requests. But that would get us to the same operating budget growth that we had last year. And then I just showed if you wanted less than that and how much it would be required that we could approve. So if we wanted the operating budget to grow 4%, we could only approve about $400,000 of additional budget requests versus the ask right now is 550, right? I hope my numbers are right on this. So I did this very quickly. And then I looked at the total budget growth and I did the same thing. And it gives you the same idea. Last year, it was 3.74%. And this incorporates debt and capital now. They cut capital out of it, right? So there's no increase in capital. And the debt service grew a little bit. We would only be able to approve $135,000 of additional budget requests. And the ask right now is 550. So this is to give you a range of where we are, and to have, a 3% total town budget growth. The town budget is just so tight because, and this is assuming all the other fixed costs we support, which is the staff, the above the line fixed cost base. In order to get the budget to grow at only 2%, we'd have to, in addition to not approving any of the budget requests, we'd have to also cut $372,000 out of the base budget. So I'm just showing this as an example of kind of where we are. And Bruce, this is kind of the conversation you and Scott were having. Like, what are we trying to get to? Where are we? So it gives you a framework now. I don't know if this is confusing or helpful, but it helps me.
So I think, Noreen.
No, I was just going to say, Peggy, this is very helpful. I'm always pushing, I know you get sick of hearing it, operating budget, but this is the transparency people want us to be showing them. And I think this is an excellent start to take a look at it. And this slide we have right here, there is no money from the general fund. The 750,000 is not assumed in this. This is actual cost.
This is the
non-operating.
Yeah. So this
Pre-Board of
is
Finance.
This is not the mill rate.
Yeah.
Because
You're right.
you're right. Right.
All right. I think this is, capital is capital. We make decisions on what we want, how we want to take care of our assets, and debt, again, but it's the operating budget that I keep going back to all the time. And I think this is a great tool to use. Thank you for doing this.
So I just want to add to that. I think, the voters have voted on the capital projects. They voted on the bonding questions. And so to try to put pressure on the operating budget by virtue of these other decisions, like your bottom table does, I think is a mistake for us. It's the wrong place for us to go. I think your top table is the one we should be working on and focusing on. Because if we are worried that the bonding expense is going to put too much pressure on taxpayers, then we need to be taking a much harder look at the normal operating budget before increases. So and certainly at this point in the game, I'm advocating we focus on your top table, not your bottom table.
I think I appreciate those comments because I think really this is where we have the most control. Like you said, the town's already voted, CIP has made a recommendation, and I think it's looking at what is a reasonable growth of the budget, knowing that we have a fixed cost base that is difficult to make changes to. So we have kind of more discretionary spending, which is the additional budget requests. So that gets into this table that we had talked about before. If really the two are the larger numbers, the police, and I think we kind of, if we want to talk about the police, I mean, I think just stepping aside, I think that it makes sense for us to pull out the speed signs, right? The 29,000 out of the speed signs.
Yes.
Out of their request, and then we would handle that as a special appropriation. I feel like the camera system, that's a big commitment to an ongoing expense, and I just don't know if, I understand the police this is obviously going to be very helpful for them, and I know the police commission is interested in putting these in place. I just don't know if we've had a good, thoughtful conversation about that yet, and I would be concerned about rolling that into this budget.
Yeah, I think we have to have sort of that balanced conversation about privacy versus safety.
And then when I asked Jack about, say, crime, and he didn't seem like it was overly burdensome right now in town. So that would be another reason I'd want to see
Yeah,
the cameras.
that's a great point. Mark.
I think cameras downtown, though, could potentially be part of an economic development effort.
I think we already have some cameras downtown, though, don't we?
There's one at the library, and then a lot of times businesses, the banks, they install their own for their own, safety and security. But I just don't know enough about it yet. Like, so where would these go?
Right.
What would be policies?
Where do they go, and how many do we already have? I mean, I think that's
Right,
the basic questions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, especially as we look at, having a lot more activity potentially with the community center, you might look at this a little bit differently. So I just think this is not the year to do this right now. And then we spend some time developing a more thoughtful plan that the community would support. So I would, recommend maybe we hold off on the camera request for another year.
Peggy, I too would want to hear a more public conversation about cameras downtown.
So then it gets to the officer conversation. And I mean, I think we obviously are all in agreement that we feel there's a need to support the police department and add additional officers. I think it's really a question of how we feel we want to commit to this. Do we want to phase it in over a longer period of time, or do we want to include it all? And they've already suggested that they would be comfortable with, a 2.5 number, which is committing to 3 officers, but it would be 2.5 this year. And then, the following year, the third officer, fully would account for in the next fiscal year. So that's what they're recommending. And I just wonder if the board has other thoughts. Would we want to do 1.5 or 2, or just commit to the 2, and then maybe push off the third officer for the next budget year, or support the request that they've made?
I'm inclined to lean towards 2. I mean, I think we've sort of talked about this quite a bit, but safety is paramount, but I think 2 is fairly incremental as well. My suspicion is the police commission would be comfortable with 2, given that it's been multiple years. But the flip side of that argument is I'm slightly nervous based on what Jack said, that there's going to be some retirements too. So we may have to come back and readdress this at some point.
Well, the retired positions are budgeted, so they'll just backfill them.
That's fair, Bruce.
So,
Yeah.
so those aren't new monies.
We're talking about net new FTEs. Yeah.
Right.
And I think the reality is, wouldn't we be able to hire 3 new officers and get them through training by July 1st and backfill retirements? I just know that they've struggled to fill the vacancies they have already. So I just, from a pragmatic standpoint, recognizing, okay, our goal is to get to 3, let's budget for 2, and, knowing that we can, that's maybe a more pragmatic number that we can fill quickly. I don't know, I mean, because it's already February, right? So, Stacy, do vacancies now, I mean, what has been the kind of cycle for the vacancies that they've had? I don't don't know if you're on still. Stacy's also trying to enjoy herself, so.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Vacancies, do they have any vacancies right now? I forget, you had that sheet up.
I think he said I think he said there was one. Well,
Yeah.
no. It
There's
was
one in
it was
the
one he
academy,
got today. There's one in the academy, and then he got a message of retirement today, or someone's leaving today.
Yeah,
And
today's
he did-
info I don't have, but I know we had
And he didn't-
one that was still open.
but again, those
He
are
was looking to
irrelevant.
refill.
Those are irrelevant to us, though, to Bruce's point. I mean, they're existing FTEs, so he gets to backfill them anyways.
No, but I'm just talking about it from a practical recruiting standpoint. So now town of Madison, instead of having 1 or 2 openings, is gonna have 5 or 6 openings,
Right, to fill.
right? So it's just a lot of, can we recruit that quickly and get people in place? It's February. And they can't even start trying to hire them until technically the budget's approved, right? So, so that's where I'm like looking at it from a timing standpoint. I just think this phasing in is a little bit more reasonable, that's all. And, it gives us a little buffer also.
I'm supportive of the phasing in, Peggy.
Well, I guess if we're going to do that, then I would ask that we apply that to every other staffing decision, that we don't just approve every other staffing request, that we look at a phasing in similar to what we're asking the police department to do, which by the way, I think is a
hours.
mistake. I think it's a mistake. The need is the need.
Well, but Bruce, wasn't the need there last year? Why didn't you fund it last year?
Quite frankly, they've been the odd man out when we've come to cutting budgets. And Jack has been.
No. Jack has not formally requested, because I've had conversations with him. I said, if you want to put in the officer this year, I'll support it. And he has chosen not to move it forward. He was trying to be very,
Budget conscious, yeah.
budget conscious, exactly. So I'm just saying, this board never rejected a request.
Right.
It was never presented in a budget where we turned it down.
We definitely
We
did under.
haven't passed budgets.
Yeah, we
You're
definitely.
right. Okay.
And didn't he do something with Officer Captain Race? That became an officer's position because he filled up the administration with the administrative role with non-police or something. Didn't that happen in the police department?
I
So
think he rebalanced, Noreen, something like that with different.
He did.
I think he kept the number, but it became an officer.
Correct.
And
Yeah, just kind of
they
right size. I think he called it right sizing.
I mean, they promoted, so, they're based, they're, which is good, I'm not criticizing them for that, but I think this all kind of hit at once. We had a bunch of promotions. And so, I just, I guess, I think it sounds, so I guess the discussion is, do we just go with the 2 or do we go with the 2.5 for this year?
I would like to see the model of the 2 to start.
How much money, what are we talking? I'm doing divided by 3. So you're talking about 142,000 per. Is that correct, Stacy? I took the 424 and divided by 3.
Well, you take the net number because
Oh, right. Forgot to, you're right.
Right,
You're right.
271.
it's
and then-
$90,000 roughly.
How much?
90,000.
90?
So it'd be taking 90 out, basically, in this. budget.
And then we would also show the benefits, but
Well, and then minus the 29 and minus the 24 too, for the cameras and the signs.
can I ask you a question? And I really have been totally out of touch with this. As far as the morale with Jack in the police department and all, would there be to follow what Bruce is suggesting, would this be a good thing to do as far as, I don't have any inside information, trust me on this, but I'm just wondering, with all that's going on with, different things we've discussed within the department, do you think it would be a good message of our support for him to fund all 3 of them?
Absolutely. I think that, this is my personal opinion, they work their tails off, and so this gives them, he just gets more flexibility about holidays, vacations, the summer, the craziness. He's just got more people to pull in for different things, So I think it gives relief, perhaps. So I would say, yes, this would be a good morale booster.
To
And I think
to fund all three,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that but keep in mind, we also gave them a very good contract this last year to get them more in line with where they should be compensated. And then they just did a lot of promotions and reorganization. So there's been a lot going on in the police department in the last year. So I'm just trying to balance that. That's all. And that's really what my comments are. I think that, our officers work very hard, and I think this gives them a lot more flexibility, I think, in terms of staffing, because I think they're just, drained. But it's just, I'm trying to think, maybe we go with 2.5.
If we do the 2.5, like they're asking, you're talking 45,000. I mean, I know the benefits somewhere else, talking 45,000. And if we don't do anything with these cameras right now, that's happening right there.
Plus we're committing though to that third officer, that's all. So
Right.
Done deal. So the next year we'll have that third officer as part of the budget.
Right. We'll have that other half, correct.
I'm going to stay with 2. I just think, given the current scenario, I think 2 is the right answer, short term. But I don't have a lot to base it on other than 3.
Well, that doesn't help us at all, Scott. We need to based on something so you can help me make my decision.
Yeah, I'm basing it on 2 because 3 seems like a significant cost. How's that, Noreen?
Well, I keep thinking of social services. I know they asked for more therapists and stuff too.
That's the thing. We have to balance it across all these other.
I know,
requests, so.
exactly right. Right.
So
Why don't we placeholder at 2 and possibly 2.5, and then let's talk about some of the other ones, because Stacy or Kristen, I guess, is here, can help.
I mean, we're gonna have to come back and talk about this again once we see the new model. So why don't we model it as something, put a pin in it, and come back and look at it again.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, if you guys want to go through each request and then I could run the numbers and then see if you're okay where we land after that.
Okay, so I think that so we're agreed, the signs will get special appropriation, we'll hold off on the camera system, and then we're all in agreement on 2. We'll see how the numbers come out. The half year for the third will be a point of discussion, depending on how everything shakes out, right?
Okay.
So then I think getting back to the next largest on here, which is the health department, and I think there was 2 pieces to that. One was the continuing the admin, part-time admin assistants. We were paying for that out of ARPA funds. We were down an FTE, and this is giving us half an FTE back to their retirement. So I feel that we have to have somebody in there from an administrative standpoint supporting the health department. So, and she's been working there; it's been working really well. And so, out of the health department, I would argue strongly that we should support the admin position, which is I think $24,000. Let me go back to $24,000. I think the other piece, which Trent was requesting, was the sanitarium, the additional full-time sanitarium. And I think that's one that originally we had it as an ARPA thing, because I think the view was, if this is a catch-up issue or backlog because of COVID, that made sense under ARPA. Do we need a permanent, additional sanitarium? This is one where I think it'd be great if we could have it. And I think it's always great, we have to be more responsive to the community. I just don't know if it's something that we have to have right now. And trying to be conscious, of the special we just had with the police department. That one I would say maybe put on hold, and then that could be a discussion that ARPA has, the ARPA committee has.
Okay.
And it's March, it's almost March 1st. So you're talking, they had 3 months to hire somebody. That's not going to happen. I think you take what Bruce suggested, maybe phase some of this stuff in. I apologize, but I have to get off this call, unfortunately. I'll get whatever you discuss. I'll get it later. Thank you very much, but I'm sorry I got to leave.
Okay, we'll do like a tick list that you can go over.
I
So,
appreciate it.
So I think then, well, I think this is somebody who's already working there, so this person would come in and the admin person. So Bruce, Al, and Scott, are you in agreement on the health department suggestion?
Well, can we continue to fund it through ARPA?
We could, but, I mean, it's really, we're talking about the admin?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this is a position that we had it historically in the past, we should continue to have it, and it really needs to be built into the budget.
I would support this one. I'm okay with this one, but not
Just
the,
as a,
but right now, not the additional sanitarium.
just as a housekeeping thing, I know Stacy loves to do this, but we had a targeted increase, I think, Peggy, in one of your slides. And we're starting to put in some placeholders. I'm wondering if we can't get sort of a live.
A real-time number?
A real time, yeah. So, if this is a $24,000 decision plus a placeholder on the police, see how much of our increase we're starting to eat into.
Yeah, I think the reality is we should be doing a little bit of a sensitivity analysis. That's helpful. I agree, Bruce.
Well, I think if we could make it, I mean, I guess I was thinking we have a kind of list that we're all kind of okay with, and then we see where that comes out, and then we start revisiting that if the number's too big. Or you want to go each time? That is, Stacy, are you able to do this live?
Well, what is our decision-making timeline? When do we have
Yes,
to
I can
come
do
to-
it. I can do it live.
We have to
When do
vote
we-
Monday.
We have to vote Monday?
Yeah, we have to have
Need to
our
start making some
final,
decisions.
yeah, because the public hearing is on Wednesday. So I can open it up and everything's linked in my Excel schedule. So if we can go down and then see where the results are, and if you're not happy, we can go back if that works.
Why don't we do, I think that's how we did it last year. We kind of came up with a list. We tried it, saw where it came out, and then we went back and tweaked and said, okay, because we have, so,
Yeah, I can do that. You want me to share my screen?
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got the same list basically that I got.
Mhm.
So,
Peggy, I'm okay with what you're proposing for the health department.
okay. Go ahead, Stacy.
Okay. So right now we have the full beach and rec, the building, fire marshal, health. I'm excluding the new inspector, but including the admin.
Correct.
Okay. And then we didn't talk about HR. We had a $6,300 in staff development. Right now, I'm excluding it. We can always go back if you want.
Yeah, previous meetings we had said we're going to exclude that.
Okay. Madison hose and Nomad, I included.
Yep.
Okay. Police. So what I did is I took their total request for 3 officers and included 2 officers. So versus the 271 equates to 181 for 2.
For the sake of seeing the numbers, could we leave that at 2.5?
Yep, thank you. Yep, you can change that.
Thanks.
Okay, yep. The speed signs, special appropriation, so I excluded that. The cameras, I excluded that because you wanted additional
Right.
discussion. Registrars, I included that. Tax collector included that. Town clerk included that. And now we're at youth and family services, what you guys want to do. There were 2 different requests here. The first one was, and this is in your books, just to increase for 2 people for the school-based staff. And that's-
I think yes on that one. I would vote yes for that one.
Is everybody else okay with that?
Well, I mean, put them in. I think what we need to do is
Yep,
where
yep.
we're at.
See where we're at, okay. And then the other request was for the parent support counselor to increase it to full-time. Again, excluding the benefits and the payroll taxes, that's another 16,000, so I'm including that. So the total for operating is 384. And then we have the capital, which the committee did pass on to you all to include 275,000. Do you want to see what this looks like at this point? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, here's a 384 in operating, the 275 in capital. So it brings total town an increase of 4.6. Once we incorporate the Board of Ed, we're at 2.63.
In a year of $100 million of referendums, I'm slightly concerned that 4.6 is high.
Well, it's only going to get harder.
What's
When those bond payments start coming on, it's going to put even more pressure on the operating budget.
So you're saying leave it in for now this year and then be tighter next year?
Well, I mean, I'm completely horrified at the amount of increases that we've got here. But we've heard everybody's requests. They all seem to be justified. It's, you know, it kind of is what it is at this point.
Well,
You know, if I would be dismayed at the 4.6, even if the bonding hadn't gone through. I am separating that bonding question. The taxpayers made the commitment to fund those projects. And that decision kind of stands separate from the operating budget.
Peggy, what was the number you showed was last year, 4 point something?
last year was 4.64%.
I feel like we have to be below, I feel like we need to be below 4. That would be,
That's for the operating budget. This is where I want to make sure, like, so Stacy is showing, the operational budget.
so we're 3.95 for the,
3.95.
so we're 3.95, so that is low.
Yeah,
Was below that, but then, the total budget request last year.
I want to say it was higher than that. 4.6.
Total budget request last year was only, 3.74%.
I'm okay, I'm actually okay given we're below 4%, so that doesn't, it's less than last year. That's what I was hoping to see. It's minuscule less, tiny bit less than last year, but
What was the
But-
So last year we were 4.16 total operational, and then overall 3.74.
And this is
Now
it's 3.95.
Well, last year we did keep capital flat. So that would, you know, and this year we're trying to not reduce the base, just knowing that debt service is coming forward in the upcoming years. So if we reduce the base and keep capital flat and infuse money in there, that's great. But now the base is lower and now, you know, the debt is going to come on in a couple of years, which is really gonna hit us hard. So the thought was to kind of, you know, continue to fund CIP the way we should.
Well,
And not,
so, yeah, I mean, I think that conversation is really about the the mill rate, right? Ultimately. I think to Bruce's point with the operational budget, I mean, okay, yeah, we're below last year, but I just feel like we gotta look back at that list and say, okay, some of the things are people asking for more hours, right? And the purpose of those more hours is to provide better service, right? So it just means we're more responsive. So, and then, you know, like, we didn't really talk about beach and rec, you know, there's planned cycle maintenance and then concerts. I don't know, I mean, I think there's still some things in here we could rethink.
What if we did 10 for that one? I'm just playing, start, what if we brought that down to 10? They can figure out what the details are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that these are all individually so little that you can play around with them and they're not going to move the needle.
But it does move the needle if you look at it in aggregate and start looking at each one of these and saying.
Yeah. And it's more than they have now.
And this is also a commitment that we were making for future budgets, right? We add hours, but it's really hard to reduce hours, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to go back down this then and see where we end up?
Sure.
So,
Okay.
So Stace, just for clarity, if you put the 10 up by the plan and cycle, just so we know, does your sheet work that way? Are you summing up the total or?
I'm summing up the total at the end, so I can fix
so
it in the end,
10,000 you've
Bruce.
got is not a subtotal, it's just a plug number.
Yeah, I'm just throwing the 10,000 in there.
If you put the 10,000 up in E4, does your formula fall apart at the bottom?
It could. Let's see, 374. All right, we're good.
All right, let's keep going. Can we keep going?
Yep. Building,
So, you know, this is one, we're taking an employee and adding extra hours. Just he's busy and he just wants more support. So I guess the question is, I mean, we could talk about the fact that he was looking to, he generates revenue.
yeah, and keep in mind, we are increasing the revenue for the building department by $50,000. So he's more than covering this increase.
Does that mean this could offset it?
Yep. When we develop the mill rate, it won't offset the expenditure, Scott, when we look at, you know, what people actually vote on. But when we do the mill rate, there will be $50,000 additional from last year. And this is $8,000, which is
I mean,
So just keep-
right, it just each
not that
of the
material.
requests for more hours of support, building, fire marshal, the town clerk, right? These are all requests for more hours of support to provide their services.
What if we did each, again, I'm just trying to come up with ideas to lower the budget, but what if we said for each one of the groups asking for hours, what if we said, we'll give you 50% this year? So it's back to your phasing point, Bruce, right? So what if we said 50% this year and we'll consider the next 50% next year so that we ease into it as opposed to doing it all in 1 year?
I think we would be better utilized going back into the normal operating budget and seeing if we could find a 0.5 percentage point somewhere. You know, or 1 percentage point. Because
Where do we find it?
we're going to go from $8,000 to $4,000. I don't know that these things move incrementally. They might be steps.
Right, but these are in front of us given their ads as opposed to us having to go back into the operating budget and try to figure it out from scratch. So I don't know.
These
I'm
are
just looking at what's in front of
asking
us.
for extra hours. So you're saying instead of getting, you know, you ask for an additional 5.5 hours a week, right? It's 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
That's what you're suggesting, Scott?
Yes,
So go to 2.75.
yeah,
These are, But just-
I'm just trying to come up with ideas, guys. If you don't like them, throw them
No,
out.
I know, and I'm just saying, keep in mind, because these are now, we're building these into the budget, these extra hours, or these, that's gonna be a commitment for next year's.
Anybody else who has ideas of how to do this, feel free. I'm just trying to throw out ideas to move us
Okay.
along.
Where are we? I'm sorry. So we cut the beach and rec in half. Building, are we looking to cut that in half?
Anyone?
No?
You think it's-
I don't think it's worth trying to change
Okay.
8,000 to 4,000.
Fire marshal?
So we have the same thing, so,
They all add up. I mean, they're all going to end up being 20 grand by the time you get to it, Bruce.
so. And then, the health department, that person is working that now. And then
Yeah.
in that position, so that's new.
So now we're at the fire departments
Yeah,
where their operations, just like the town's operations, just the cost of running business has just increased, and they have not asked for additional money in years. So are we okay supporting? Okay,
I'm supportive of that, I think.
okay,
They just absorb probably costs. So we talked about police, so this is the one where this is building 2.5, correct? So I think
Yep.
this is a 2.5, correct?
yep,
Okay.
2.5, yep,
And then if you go down, registrars of voter, absolutely, we are so underpaying these people compared to what I know other towns are doing, so. So tax collector, I mean, this is getting, she's not had extra hours in a long time, so this would be, another, we could cut that in half, that would be another, so 5, 6, 9, would be $15,000, or $20,000, if we did to 50%. And then town clerk. This is elections, so I don't know how much.
yeah, and this is the type of thing, and I can tell you in past years, she did reduce her budget. It's based on what she knows going forward, so the little ebbs and flows, I think, is fine and reasonable.
So youth and family, I guess I was a little confused because my understanding is 2 positions. One is the parent support counselor, which we've had many lengthy discussions about making this person full-time. And our board actually voted to make it full-time. And then that was in 2020. And then the Board of Finance, the pandemic hit, the Board of Finance said, we're not gonna have any new staff increases. And so that was left as is, as a part-time position. So that's something our board did actually support at one point. This is the same position. I'm a little confused
Yeah.
about the one above, though, the other position. This to me was basically regrading some positions, right? Within youth and family. So it's not adding hours or adding people or time. It's basically taking positions and then regrading them, right? So it's modifying the 2 positions and then regrade and align them.
Yeah,
So,
Isn't there 2 numbers? Like in my book right now, I see 10.5, which is that one that you're on right now, Stace. Then
Yeah.
the second one is 38.1.
yep, we reduced it, Scott, because that also included the benefits, the health insurance,
Oh, okay.
and we don't typically do that.
Okay. Helpful.
Yep,
Thank you.
because of our self-funding, remember, because of our self-funding, it's not like an automatic increase.
Yep. That makes sense.
because it's based on historical claims.
So where are we right now?
Where are we right now? We are at, so if we do everything, including the entire CIP, we're at 2.62.
But what's the operating budget? 3.91.
Yeah, we haven't made any changes though since.
Yeah, we did a little. What, we did something at the top, I think. We did 10 grand out of Beach and Rec.
Yeah,
What,
yep,
what,
yep.
what are we trying to get to? I think that to me is the conversation we should be having. What are we trying to get to here? What's our goal?
Yeah. I think it's hard between the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. I think the Board of Selectmen is policy driven and needs driven and what do you want for the town? If you all agree that this is what we need, then we move on to the Board of Finance and let them figure out how we can afford it. I don't know, or I can throw these numbers in the mill rate and you guys can see how it ends up, and then maybe go back to the drawing board again if you want. I mean, if you believe in all of these requests and how we can support the town, then I think we move forward from there.
I believe in all these requests and how they support the town. I'm just worried that the number's too high, but I need you guys to chime in with an opinion too. I can't be the only one saying that out loud, so.
Well, I mean, Scott, I'm concerned about the size of the number as well, but at this point, going back and cutting is arbitrary. And we're back to sort of the blunt instrument of just blanket reductions, which we isn't something that we've really given a lot of time to. I'm guessing because we don't think it's a practical way to proceed. Too much, too little is all arbitrary. It's all subjective.
Yeah, but again, I threw out the idea, I'm just the idea man about a 10% reduction. What if we did a 3% reduction to everybody's budget? That would get you to your number, Bruce. And I know everybody hates me for saying that, but I'm just trying to come up with ideas for getting to a better number.
Yes.
But what is the better number? I guess that's what I'm struggling with.
Right. 4 days before we have to decide on a number to recommend to the Board of Finance and have a public hearing on, I'm not sure that we can throw back to Peggy and say, figure out how to make it work with a 3% reduction or a 10% reduction. I think, that was a conversation probably for August, not for February.
I mean, I think that, I don't know, I guess I'm just looking at this, if people want to get this number down, and, it's really about, we're committing to more hours and more people, basically. That's what these, additional budget requests are, more hours and more people, right? So, because there's really nothing else in there, I think it's hours and people, right? So,
Yeah.
So, the question is, should we be doing that knowing what we have coming down the pipe? Should we be committing to more hours and more people right now? So we had a long conversation about the police, and I think the board was supportive of adding to the police. So then do we need these extra hours, I'd like them to have it, people are working hard, but it is a commitment going forward, so it's going to roll to the next year, and that's kind of what I think has just happened over the years, is we've kind of looked at it, and that's why we have this kind of larger fixed cost base now that just moves forward.
Yeah, and I guess, we're so focused on the increase in expenditures, but don't forget the grand list is jumping a lot this year, way above the average of the last 10 years. So if you're more, if you're worried about the impact of the taxpayers, you got to take the revenue and the grand list into account too. So coming up with a number based on just the expenditures really does not give you the full picture. So if you believe in what you're, supporting here, we could run it through the mill rate with the estimated grand list growth and see where it's at if you want to see what the impact would be. Otherwise, this is what you guys believe in based on the services we want to provide.
Well, that makes sense to me. I think, let's see what the product of this work is on, you know, on the mill rate, and we can regroup after that.
I too would like to see what Stacy's analysis shows. I'm going to go philosophical for a moment. This is the most difficult time of the year to be a selectman, in my opinion. And yet the public has put the 5 of us in office with the expectation that we are going to come to an agreement about what this town needs going forward. And I find everything in this budget quite defensible and quite acceptable. And so I think I'm prepared to face the public and say, this is what it costs to give you the government that you want. So while I await Stacy's further analysis, especially the impact on the mill rate, I'm very comfortable with the point we're at right now. Not comfortable that it's a minimal budget increase, but I'm comfortable that the 5 of us have come up with a budget that we believe provides townspeople with the services they're expecting. So I think we've done our job.
Okay, Al, well, I appreciate the summary. I think let's convene again on Monday, you know, with the mill rate impact. We know the areas that if we feel we need to reduce it more, we can go there and just reflect on it. And with that, you know, also, let me just, one thing I did want to highlight that we never really talked about, we never got to this, is if I can share the screen real quickly, I know everybody wants to go.
Sorry. Yeah.
Share. Okay. Is that special appropriation request, because last time what we did was make a recommendation to the Board of Finance, and so you know, here were some ideas. So we could go back to the approach that was taken last year to do the flat funding, which I just hesitating a lot on doing because I think it kind of, you know, causes further problems down the road. So I would not necessarily advocate that, but that's one option. The police sign one we talked about. One thing, and this is not in the budget, but the planning reserve, I think we've just held steady. And this isn't, you know, I'd like to see some money somehow infused into that reserve because of all the grant programs and everything that we're going to be going after. We just need some money available to hire consultants, hire people to put together proposals for us, you know, engineering design work. We just need some more resources to go after this stuff. And because it's all hitting at once, and we're going to have to outsource. We can't do it all in-house. And I just don't know if our planning reserve is really robust enough to absorb those costs. So, you know, by putting just an additional infusion into that through a special appropriation, and I don't know, Kristen, do you have the balance of that account right now?
Just going to look.
I was trying to remember, I talked about this with Stacy last week, but I'm just concerned that usually we have like a number of different things happening, you know, that we tap into the planning reserve account, but now with all the different projects that we might want to kind of try to tee ourselves up for, we're going to need some more money. And this is more one-off to get us through the next year.
Right now, it's 285.
285, okay. And we're growing that at how much?
50 a year.
50?
50,000.
Okay, so this would add another, you know, 50.
Well, keep in mind, sorry, now that I'm remembering, we infused the money for the WPCA, 150,000. So if you take that out of it,
Yeah,
then we're down to 130.
yeah, right.
So sorry about that. Yep.
So anyway, so that's a thought I have, and this we can talk about more on Monday, was, you know, this is just a special appropriation, it's not building into the budget. And then, sorry, just messing around with all this stuff. And then, the other thing is we did this last year, but we have these bridge projects going on that are really bumping into this next year that are once again suppressing what we can spend on paving. Because we tend to kind of jumble it back and forth. And so if we wanted to keep our paving program, consistent and spending the same amount of money on paving every year, this was doing another special appropriation into the account. We did it last year. And so John can talk more about that, and I might have him talk to you guys about that on Monday, just to walk through that. But this would be a recommended special appropriation into that account. So then I just want to flag those for you, and then we can talk more about them on Monday as other things as we did last time, we made some recommendations. And then our board would vote on these as special appropriations. Okay?
All right.
All right, great. All right, so to be continued, and we'll get this wrapped up on Monday. I'm sure we're almost there. We just got it. And this is before our next meeting, right? Our board selectmen meeting?
Yes.
So if for some reason,
Yes.
so it's only giving us an hour before our board selectmen meeting.
So if you're
I can
not,
send you all a summary before, as well as a mill rate estimate based on what we know right now. So we can have a head start for the meeting.
If we needed more time, I guess we could.
what you would do is you would adjourn to the regular meeting, do your business, and then adjourn back to the budget workshop.
Okay, so if we have to go, yeah.
We're pulling an all-nighter.
I know, my mind is just not right now, so,
Are we good?
I think we're good, guys. All right, thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Night.